When HOA Karen threw my daughter's puppy out of a plane, she thought she was teaching us a lesson. She didn't know 3 things. I'm a military pilot, that puppy was my dying wife's last gift, and Karen had already destroyed my family once before. Now it's payback time. Before watching full story, comment below from where you watching, also like and subscribe for more stories. The rain pounded against the small apartment window as 7-year-old Emma pressed her face against the cold glass. Her golden retriever puppy, Sunshine, sat beside her, tail wagging softly. Emma's mother, Sarah, had been gone for 3 months now. Cancer had taken her away too soon, leaving Emma and her father David to pick up the pieces of their shattered lives. "Daddy, when will Mommy come back?" Emma asked for the 100th time, her small fingers tracing raindrops on the window. David's heart broke a little more each time she asked. He knelt beside his daughter, his airline pilot uniform still crisp despite the long day. "Remember what we talked about, sweetheart? Mommy is watching us from heaven now. She can't come back, but she loves us very much." Emma nodded sadly and hugged Sunshine tighter. The puppy had been Sarah's last gift to Emma before she passed away. "Sunshine will keep you company when I can't," Sarah had whispered from her hospital bed. "Promise me you'll take care of each other." David looked at his small family, just him, Emma and Sunshine now. He had sold their big house after Sarah's medical bills drained their savings. The insurance money was tied up in legal battles, and his pilot salary barely covered their basic needs. But they had each other, and that's what mattered. "Daddy, Mrs. Henderson from downstairs came again today," Emma said quietly. She was very angry about Sunshine. David's jaw tightened. Margaret Henderson was the self-appointed HOA president of their apartment complex. She had made their lives miserable since they moved in, constantly complaining about everything from Emma's toys in the hallway to Sunshine's occasional barking. "What did she say this time, Princess?" "She said Sunshine is too big for apartments. She said we have to get rid of him or she'll call the police." Emma's eyes filled with tears. "Daddy, we can't let them take Sunshine away. Mommy gave him to me." David pulled his daughter close, feeling rage build in his chest. He had already explained to Henderson multiple times that Sunshine was properly registered as Emma's emotional support animal. The dog helped Emma cope with her mother's death and her own anxiety. But Henderson didn't care about a grieving child's needs. "Don't worry, Emma. No one is taking Sunshine away from us. I promise." But promises, David would soon learn, were fragile things in a cruel world. The next morning, David was called into his supervisor's office at the airline. Captain Williams, a kind man in his 50s, looked troubled as David entered. "David, I need to talk to you about something serious," Williams began. "I got a call from someone claiming to be from your HOA. They said you're keeping a dangerous animal in violation of housing rules." David's blood ran cold. "Sir, Sunshine is Emma's registered emotional support animal. He's not dangerous, he's a gentle puppy who helps my daughter deal with her mother's death." Williams raised his hand. "I believe you, David." But the caller was very persistent. "They threatened to contact the airline's corporate office, claiming you're unstable and unfit to fly. You know how seriously the company takes any accusations about pilot mental health." David felt the walls closing in. His pilot license was everything. Without it, he couldn't support Emma. "What are you saying, Captain?" "I'm saying you need to resolve this situation quickly. I can protect you for now, but if this escalates to corporate..." Williams shook his head. "Just fix it, David. Your daughter needs her father to keep his job." David drove home with a heavy heart. As he parked outside their apartment complex, he saw Henderson standing by the mailboxes with 2 other residents, pointing at his car and talking animatedly. When she saw him, she marched over with a triumphant smile. "Mr. Morrison, I hope you got my message through your employer," she said coldly. "It's time you learned that rules apply to everyone, even people who think they're special because they fly planes." "Mrs. Henderson, please. Emma has been through enough. Sunshine is legally registered as her support animal. You're harassing a grieving child." Henderson's eyes gleamed with malice. "I don't care about your sob stories. That animal goes or you both go. And if you think your little pilot job protects you, think again. I have connections too." David stared at this woman who seemed to feed on others' misery. "What do you want from us?" "We keep to ourselves. We don't bother anyone. I want compliance with HOA rules. No pets over 20 pounds. That dog is clearly oversized." Henderson's voice rose dramatically. "And I want respect for my authority as HOA president. You people think you can just move into our nice community and do whatever you want." "You people?" David's voice was dangerously quiet. "Single fathers with no discipline. letting children run wild, keeping illegal animals. This used to be a respectable place before your kind moved in. David's hands clenched into fists, but he forced himself to stay calm. Getting arrested would only make things worse for Emma. I'll review the HOA documents again. But Sunshine stays. He's helping my daughter heal. Henderson stepped closer, her voice dropping to a vicious whisper. You have 48 hours to get rid of that mutt or I'll make sure you lose everything. Your apartment, your job, maybe even that little girl. Child Services loves hearing about unfit fathers who can't follow simple rules. As she walked away, David felt a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. This woman wasn't just a nuisance, she was a predator who enjoyed destroying families. That evening, David sat at his kitchen table surrounded by legal documents. He had spent hours researching tenant rights, emotional support animal laws, and HOA regulations. The complex's original pet policy allowed animals under 40 pounds with proper registration. Sunshine, at 35 pounds, was well within the limit. Henderson had apparently changed the rules without proper voting procedures, making her new restrictions legally invalid. Emma was in her room, doing homework with Sunshine lying at her feet. The sight of his daughter slowly returning to some semblance of normalcy gave David hope. Maybe they could fight this legally. Maybe justice would prevail. His phone rang. It was Captain Williams. David, I'm sorry to call so late, but there's been a development. Corporate received a formal complaint about you today. The caller claimed you threatened violence against a community leader and that you're mentally unstable following your wife's death. David's world tilted. Captain, that's completely false. I never threatened anyone. I know, son. But corporate is requiring a psychological evaluation before you can fly again. It's standard procedure for any mental health concerns. The evaluation is scheduled for next week. After hanging up, David stared at the wall in shock. Henderson wasn't just trying to evict them, she was systematically destroying his life. Without his pilot income, he couldn't afford lawyers or even their basic living expenses. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. Emma stood in the doorway, clutching Sunshine's leash. Daddy, Sunshine needs to go outside for his walk. David looked at his daughter's innocent face and made a decision. Let's all go together, princess. They walked to the small courtyard behind the building where Sunshine could run freely. Emma threw a tennis ball while David watched, his mind racing through possible solutions. Maybe they could move to another complex. Maybe he could find a lawyer who would work pro bono. Well, look what we have here. David turned to see Henderson approaching with a man in a security uniform and a woman with a clipboard. This is the illegal animal I told you about, Henderson announced loudly. And there's the irresponsible owner who refuses to follow community rules. The security guard looked uncomfortable. Ma'am, the dog seems well behaved. And the little girl. Don't let their act fool you, Henderson snapped. That man threatened me yesterday. He's unstable, probably violent. The dog could attack at any moment. Emma moved closer to David, sensing the tension. Sunshine sat calmly beside her, looking up at the adults with confused brown eyes. The woman with the clipboard spoke up. Mr. Morrison, I'm Janet Cole from Animal Control. We received a complaint about an aggressive animal and an unfit pet owner. There must be some mistake, David said carefully. Sunshine is registered as my daughter's emotional support animal. He's never been aggressive. Registration doesn't matter if the animal poses a public safety risk, Henderson interjected. I've documented multiple incidents of threatening behavior from both the dog and the owner. David stared at her in disbelief. What incidents? You're making this up. Henderson pulled out her phone. I have video evidence of your aggressive behavior, Mr. Morrison. Would you like me to show these officers how you threatened me yesterday? David realized with growing horror that Henderson had recorded their conversation, probably editing it to remove context and make him look threatening. She had planned this ambush carefully. Emma tugged on David's sleeve. Daddy, what's happening? Why are they looking at Sunshine like that? The animal control officer knelt down to Emma's level. Hi, sweetheart. We just need to check on your doggy to make sure he's healthy and safe. He is safe, Emma said firmly. Sunshine is the best dog in the world. Mommy gave him to me before she went to heaven. Janet Cole's expression softened slightly, but Henderson quickly stepped forward. Don't fall for the manipulation, she hissed. These people use that child to get sympathy. The father is clearly unstable, he lost his wife and now he's taking it out on the rest of us. David felt something snap inside him. How dare you bring my wife into this? How dare you use my daughter's grief for your sick games? There. Henderson pointed dramatically. See how violent he gets? This man is dangerous. The security guard stepped between them. Everyone needs to calm down. But it was too late. Henderson had her phone out, recording again. Officers, I fear for my safety. This man is clearly unhinged. Emma started crying, confused and scared by the shouting adults. Sunshine whined and pressed against her, trying to comfort his young owner. Janet Cole made a decision that would change everything. Mr. Morrison, I'm sorry, but given the allegations of aggressive behavior, I have to place the animal in protective custody until we can complete a full investigation. No. Emma screamed. You can't take Sunshine. Daddy, don't let them take him. David stepped forward desperately. Please, you don't understand. My daughter has already lost her mother. This dog is all she has left for comfort. The child's welfare is exactly why we need to act, Henderson said with fake concern. Living with an unstable father and a dangerous animal is no environment for a little girl. As the animal control officer approached Sunshine with a leash, Emma threw herself between them. I won't let you hurt him. He's my dog. Mommy said to take care of each other. The sight of his 7-year-old daughter desperately trying to protect her puppy while tears streamed down her face broke something fundamental in David's chest. This wasn't just about HOA rules or property values. This was cruelty for the sake of cruelty. It's okay, Emma, he said softly, kneeling beside his daughter. Let them take Sunshine for now. We'll get him back, I promise. Emma looked at her father with betrayal in her eyes. You said nobody would take him away. You promised. As they led Sunshine away, the puppy looked back at Emma with confused, trusting eyes. He didn't understand why his family was letting strangers take him from the only home he'd ever known. Henderson watched the scene with satisfaction. Sometimes hard lessons are necessary for people to learn their place, she said quietly to David. This could have been avoided if you had just followed the rules. That night, Emma cried herself to sleep in David's arms. I want Mommy, she whispered. I want Sunshine. Why do bad people always win, Daddy? David stared at the ceiling, holding his broken daughter, and felt something cold and calculating settle in his heart. Henderson wanted to play games? Fine. But she had no idea who she was really dealing with. David spent the next 3 days navigating bureaucratic nightmares. Animal control required multiple forms, character references, and a home inspection before they would even consider returning Sunshine. The psychological evaluation for his job was scheduled for the following week, and without his pilot income, their savings were disappearing fast. Emma barely spoke. She sat by the window for hours, waiting for Sunshine to come home. She refused to eat most of her meals and had nightmares every night. Mrs. Patterson wants to see you, Emma said listlessly when David picked her up from school on Friday. Emma's teacher, Mrs. Patterson, was a kind woman in her 40s who had been patient with Emma's struggles since Sarah's death. Mr. Morrison, I'm concerned about Emma, she said gently. She's been withdrawn all week. She told me someone took her dog away. Is everything all right at home? David explained the situation, watching Mrs. Patterson's expression grow increasingly troubled. That's terrible, she said. Emma has made such progress with Sunshine's help. Taking him away could set her back months in her grief recovery. She paused. Mr. Morrison, would you like me to write a letter for your case? As an educator, I can testify to the positive impact Sunshine has had on Emma's emotional development. That would be incredibly helpful. Thank you. As they were leaving, David's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Check your email. A friend. The email contained security camera footage from the apartment complex's parking lot. David watched in amazement as the video clearly showed Henderson staging their confrontation, positioning herself to make her recording look more dramatic than it really was. In one clip, she could be seen practicing her frightened victim routine before David even arrived. But more interesting was what he found when he researched the sender's digital signature. The email had been sent from the airline's corporate IT department. Someone inside the company was helping him, but who? His phone rang. David Morrison? Yes. This is Rebecca Chin, head of corporate security at Skyline Airlines. Can you meet me tomorrow morning? I think we need to talk. Rebecca Chin was not what David had expected. The head of airline security was a small, sharp-eyed woman who looked like she could see through walls. Her office was filled with monitors showing flights, security feeds, and data streams from around the world. Sit down, Captain Morrison. We have a problem. David tensed. Ma'am? The problem isn't you. It's the person who's been harassing you. Rebecca pulled up files on her computer. Margaret Henderson has been busy. She's contacted our corporate office 6 times in the past week, claiming you're a security risk. She's also reached out to the FAA, the local police and Child Protective Services. David's blood chilled. CPS. Don't worry, they dismissed her complaints as obviously false. But here's what's interesting. Rebecca turned her monitor toward David. Mrs. Henderson isn't just a retired busybody with too much time on her hands. She's the former VP of Ground Operations for Meridian Airlines, our biggest competitor. David stared at the screen showing Henderson's employment history. She worked for an airline? For 23 years until she was forced to retire following a discrimination lawsuit. Apparently, she made life hell for minority employees and single parents. Rebecca leaned forward. David, I don't think this is random HOA harassment. I think someone is paying her to target you specifically. But why? I'm just a pilot. I'm not involved in anything sensitive. Rebecca pulled up another file. You're not just any pilot. You're Captain David Morrison, who flew rescue missions during Hurricane Maria, who testified before Congress about aviation safety improvements, and who's been recommended for promotion to chief pilot for our new international routes. David's mind reeled. You think someone is trying to sabotage my career? I think someone wants to discredit you before the promotion announcement. And they found the perfect weapon, a grieving widower with a vulnerable child. Rebecca's expression hardened. But they made one mistake. They messed with an airline family and we protect our own. She handed David a thick folder. This contains everything we've dug up on Henderson's recent activities, her financial records, and her connections to Meridian Airlines. There's also a restraining order ready to file and a team of lawyers ready to destroy anyone who threatens our employees' families. David opened the folder, his hands shaking slightly. Why are you helping me? Rebecca's expression softened. Because I have a daughter too. And because sometimes the system fails good people. When that happens, we have to make our own justice. Armed with Rebecca's evidence, David met with the lawyer Skyline Airlines had provided, a sharp woman named Lisa Grant who specialized in harassment cases. This is a clear pattern of targeted harassment with possible corporate conspiracy, Lisa said after reviewing the files. We can not only get your dog back, but we can file criminal charges and civil suits that will leave Henderson wishing she'd never heard your name. I don't want money, David said firmly. I want my daughter's dog back and I want Henderson to leave us alone. Oh, we'll get both. But David, you need to understand something. This woman destroyed other families before you. The airline found records of at least 6 other cases where she drove single parents out of housing or jobs. She enjoys ruining lives. David thought of Emma's tears, of Sunshine's confused eyes as strangers led him away. Then it's time someone stopped her. The next morning, David arrived at the animal control office with Lisa Grant, Mrs. Patterson, a pediatric psychologist who had evaluated Emma, and Rebecca Chin. Henderson was already there with her own lawyer, looking confident. Mr. Morrison, she said smugly, I hope you're here to formally surrender the animal. The investigation has confirmed my concerns about public safety. Lisa Grant stepped forward with a briefcase full of documents. Actually, Mrs. Henderson, we're here to discuss your pattern of criminal harassment and fraud. Henderson's lawyer looked confused. I'm sorry, what fraud? Lisa began laying out documents on the table. Let's start with the forged HOA documents changing pet policies without proper voting procedures. Then we have the staged confrontations, the false reports to multiple agencies, and the coordination with Meridian Airlines to sabotage Captain Morrison's career. Henderson's face went pale. That's ridiculous. I don't know anything about any airline conspiracy. Really? Rebecca Chin spoke for the first time. Because we have financial records showing payments from a Meridian Airlines subsidiary to your consulting company. We also have emails discussing neutralizing the competition for the chief pilot position. The animal control supervisor, who had been quiet until now, looked up from the documents. Mrs. Henderson, is it true that you filed false reports about this dog's behavior? The dog was clearly aggressive. Ma'am, Mrs. Patterson interrupted gently, I've worked with children for 15 years. Sunshine is one of the most gentle animals I've ever seen. He helped Emma through the worst period of her young life. Separating them was cruel and unnecessary. The pediatric psychologist added, the trauma of losing both her mother and her emotional support animal in such a short time has caused significant regression in Emma's recovery. This appears to be deliberate psychological abuse of a child. Henderson's lawyer was frantically whispering to his client. David could see the panic in Henderson's eyes as she realized how completely her scheme had backfired. There's more, Lisa continued. We have testimonies from 6 other families that Mrs. Henderson has harassed out of housing and employment over the past 5 years. This is a pattern of behavior, not a single incident. The animal control supervisor made his decision. Mr. Morrison, I'm authorizing the immediate return of your animal. Mrs. Henderson, you are banned from filing any further complaints with this office without substantial evidence and corroborating witnesses. But David wasn't finished. As they prepared to leave, he turned to face Henderson directly. You wanted to teach me about consequences, he said quietly. Let me teach you something about the people you've been targeting. Henderson's eyes narrowed. You don't scare me, pilot boy. I've destroyed better men than you. David smiled, and something in his expression made Henderson step back. Margaret, do you know what I did before I became a commercial pilot? I don't care about your resume. I was a military pilot. Special operations. Do you know what that means? David's voice remained calm, almost conversational. It means I'm very good at gathering intelligence, building strategic plans, and executing precise operations against targets who think they're untouchable. Henderson's lawyer tugged at her sleeve, but she shook him off. Are you threatening me? I'm educating you. See, when you started targeting my family, I didn't just rely on lawyers and corporate security. I did what I was trained to do, I investigated my enemy. David pulled out his phone and began reading from his notes. Margaret Henderson, age 58, lives alone at 42 Maple Street. Divorced 3 times, no children, no close friends. Currently receiving disability payments for a back injury that prevents her from working, except you seem perfectly capable of harassing families and staging dramatic confrontations. Henderson's face was now white. How did you? Your nephew Bradley, the one you're so proud of? The one you told everyone is studying to be a lawyer? He's actually in county jail for embezzlement. Your disability claim lists severe mobility issues, but we have video of you jogging in the park 3 times a week. Your HOA presidential position? You appointed yourself after forging signatures on nomination forms. Stop, Henderson whispered. Oh, I'm just getting started. Do you want to know the most interesting thing I discovered? David leaned closer, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. I know who you really are, Margaret. And I know what you did to the Hendricks family. At the mention of that name, Henderson went completely rigid. You don't know anything. The Hendricks family. 3 years ago. A young mother with cancer, her husband deployed overseas, and their twin 6-year-old girls. You were their property manager. You evicted them while the mother was in chemotherapy because you said children made too much noise. Henderson was shaking now. That was business. They were behind on rent. By 3 days. 3 days while the husband's military pay was delayed. Sarah Hendricks died in a homeless shelter because you wouldn't give them 2 weeks to get back on their feet. David's voice remained steady, but his eyes were ice cold. She died because you decided a military family didn't deserve basic human decency. I didn't know she would die. Yes, you did. Because when her husband called begging you to reconsider, you told him that maybe next time he'd choose a wife who wasn't a burden on society. The room had gone completely silent. Even Henderson's lawyer was staring at his client in horror. But here's the part you didn't know, Margaret. Sarah Hendricks was my wife's sister. Emma's aunt. My family. David's mask of calm finally slipped, revealing the fury beneath. My wife spent her last weeks alive crying about her sister's death, blaming herself for not being able to help because she was fighting her own cancer battle. Henderson stumbled backward. That's impossible. The Hendricks, the name. Sarah Morrison was her married name. Sarah Hendricks was her maiden name. She never changed it on the lease because she was too sick to deal with paperwork. David stepped forward as Henderson retreated. You didn't just hurt random families, Margaret. You killed my sister-in-law and helped break my wife's heart before cancer finished the job. The magnitude of the coincidence, if it was a coincidence, hit everyone in the room like a physical blow. Henderson's voice was barely a whisper. I didn't know. I couldn't have known. But you knew she was dying. You knew those little girls needed their home. You knew that family was desperate. And you destroyed them anyway because it made you feel powerful. David's voice rose slightly. Well, congratulations, Margaret. You got my attention. The revelations in the animal control office were just the beginning. Within 24 hours, David's military contacts had helped him uncover a network of corruption that went far beyond simple harassment. Henderson had been operating an illegal property management scheme, taking bribes from landlords to evict tenants so units could be rented at higher rates. She had falsified disability claims while working under the table. Most damning of all, the payments from Meridian Airlines were part of a larger corporate espionage operation targeting multiple airlines' key personnel. The FBI became involved when the interstate nature of the airline conspiracy came to light. Henderson found herself facing federal charges for wire fraud, conspiracy, and civil rights violations. But the most devastating blow came from an unexpected source. David was picking up Sunshine from animal control when his phone rang. It was Emma's school. "Mr. Morrison, you need to come quickly. Emma has something important to tell you." When David arrived at the school, he found Emma sitting with Mrs. Patterson and a woman he didn't recognize. "Daddy?" Emma ran to him, then stopped and looked serious. "Mrs. Patterson says I should tell you about the lady who came to see me yesterday." David's blood went cold. "What lady, princess?" "The mean lady from our building. She came to my school and asked me lots of questions about you and Sunshine." Mrs. Patterson looked grim. "Mr. Morrison, a woman claiming to be from Child Services interviewed Emma without permission or notification. When we asked for proper identification, she became belligerent and left quickly." The other woman stepped forward. "I'm Detective Sarah Kim, Mr. Morrison. We believe Mrs. Henderson attempted to coerce your daughter into making false statements about alleged abuse or neglect." Emma tugged on David's sleeve. "Daddy, she told me that if I said you were mean to me I could go live with a nice family and keep Sunshine. But I told her you're the best daddy in the world and I would never leave you." David knelt down and hugged his daughter tightly, overwhelmed by her loyalty and strength. At 7 years old, Emma had recognized manipulation and refused to be turned against her father. "She also said something else," Emma continued. "She said Mommy's sister was weak and deserved what happened to her. She said weak people die and strong people like her survive." The detective's expression darkened. "She said that to a 7-year-old child?" David stood up slowly, feeling a fury so pure it was almost peaceful. Henderson had not only destroyed his sister-in-law's family and tormented his own daughter, she had deliberately told a grieving child that her aunt deserved to die. "Detective, I want to press every charge possible. And I want to file a civil suit that will leave her with nothing." "That won't be a problem, Mr. Morrison. Between the federal charges, the state fraud charges, and the evidence of child endangerment, Mrs. Henderson is looking at significant prison time." Henderson's world collapsed with breathtaking speed. The FBI investigation revealed that she had defrauded over 30 families across 3 states, often targeting military families and single parents who were less likely to have resources to fight back. The insurance fraud from her fake disability claims added years to her potential sentence. But it was the airline conspiracy that made her a federal priority. Meridian Airlines, facing their own investigation, immediately fired the executives involved and offered to cooperate fully in exchange for leniency. They threw Henderson under the bus so quickly it left her lawyers scrambling. David was at home helping Emma with homework when Rebecca Chin called. "David, Henderson just tried to make a deal with the FBI. She's offering to testify against the airline executives in exchange for a reduced sentence." "Will they take the deal?" "They don't need to. We already have enough evidence to convict everyone involved. Her testimony would be nice, but it's not necessary." Rebecca paused. "There's something else. She wants to see you." David was quiet for a long moment. "Why?" "She claims she has information about your sister-in-law's death that she never told anyone. The FBI thinks she might be trying to manipulate you into asking for leniency, but they're willing to arrange a meeting if you want answers." David looked at Emma, who was peacefully working on math problems with Sunshine sleeping at her feet. They had their lives back. They were safe. Did he really need to face Henderson again? "Set it up," he said finally. "But I want Emma nowhere near that woman." The meeting took place in a federal holding facility 3 days later. Henderson looked smaller somehow, diminished by orange jail clothing and the weight of her collapsed schemes. When David entered the visiting room with his lawyer and an FBI agent, Henderson's confident mask was gone. "You came," she said quietly. "You said you had information about Sarah Hendricks." Henderson stared at the table for a long moment. "I need you to understand something first. I'm not asking for forgiveness or mercy. I know what I am." "Then what do you want?" "I want to tell you the truth about your sister-in-law's last days. Because you deserve to know." David waited. "When her husband called me begging for more time, I could have given it to them. The property owner had authorized me to work with tenants in hardship. But I was angry that day. My own daughter had refused to return my calls for the 5th time, my ex-husband was late with alimony, and I was tired of people thinking they could make their problems my problems." Henderson's voice was flat, emotionless. "So when this soldier called, crying about his sick wife and scared children, I decided to teach him a lesson about personal responsibility. I told him that military families think they deserve special treatment, that his wife's cancer wasn't my problem, and that maybe this would teach them to manage their money better. David's hands clenched, but he remained silent. But then Sarah Hendricks called me herself. She was so polite. So grateful for anything I might do to help. She explained about the delayed pay, about her treatment schedule, about how frightened her little girls were. Henderson's voice cracked slightly. She thanked me for even listening to her plea. And I realized I had the power to destroy someone who was genuinely good. Someone who, even while dying, was more gracious and kind than I had ever been. It made me angry. How dare she be noble while I felt like garbage? How dare she make me feel small just by being decent? Henderson looked up at David for the first time. So I hung up on her. And when she called back, I told her that weak people who can't take care of their families deserve whatever happens to them. I told her I hoped her children learned from her failure. David felt the air leave his lungs. You told a dying mother that her children deserved to suffer. Yes. And then I called the property owner and lied. I told him the family was destroying the apartment and threatening other tenants. I made sure they had no chance of staying or finding another place with a reference from me. The FBI agent was writing furiously. Even Henderson's own lawyer looked sick. Why are you telling me this? Because when I saw you with your daughter, I recognized something. The way you protected her, the way you put her needs first, the way you'd clearly do anything to keep her safe. Henderson's voice was barely audible. You're exactly like your sister-in-law. And I realized I was about to destroy another good parent out of pure spite. David stared at this broken woman who had caused so much pain. What do you want from me, Margaret? Nothing. I just wanted you to know that Sarah Hendricks was the strongest person I ever met. She faced death with grace, protected her children until the end, and never once cursed me for what I did to her family. She was everything I never was. Henderson stood up slowly. I'm going to prison for a long time, Captain Morrison. I'll probably die there. But I wanted you to know that your sister-in-law's last words to me were that she forgave me and hoped I would find peace someday. As the guards led Henderson away, David sat in stunned silence. The FBI agent looked up from his notes. Captain Morrison, this confession adds significant charges to her case. She'll likely never see freedom again. David nodded absently, his mind replaying Henderson's words. Sarah had forgiven her killer with her last breath. Even facing homelessness and death, she had chosen grace over hatred. 6 months later, David stood in the backyard of their new house, a Real house with a big yard where sunshine could run freely. The life insurance settlement had finally come through, along with a substantial settlement from the civil suit against Henderson and Meridian Airlines. More importantly, David's promotion to chief pilot had been approved, providing financial security for Emma's future. Emma was playing fetch with sunshine, her laughter filling the air as the now-grown golden retriever bounded after tennis balls. The nightmares had stopped, her grades were back up, and she was making friends at her new school. Daddy, look how high Sunshine can jump. Emma called out as the dog leaped to catch a frisbee. David smiled, watching his daughter's joy. The trauma of their apartment ordeal was fading, replaced by the security of knowing they were truly safe. Henderson was serving a 15-year federal sentence with no possibility of parole. The airline executives were facing their own trials. The justice system for once had worked. But the real healing had come from Emma herself. Daddy, she had said one evening while they were packing their old apartment, I know Mommy would be proud of how we took care of Sunshine. We kept our promise to her. Yes, Princess, we did. And Daddy? I think Aunt Sarah would be proud too. You didn't let the mean lady win. David had knelt down to his daughter's level. Emma, how do you know about Aunt Sarah? Mrs. Patterson told me about the lady who died before I was born. She said sometimes bad people hurt good people, but that doesn't mean we should become bad people too. Emma had looked at her father with eyes far too wise for her age. She said the best way to beat mean people is to keep being good. Now, watching Emma play in their safe, beautiful yard, David understood what his wife's sister had known in her final moments. Revenge wasn't about destroying your enemies, it was about protecting what mattered most and refusing to let hatred poison your heart. His phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca Chin. Saw the news about Henderson's appeal being denied. Thought you should know, she's been helping the FBI identify other victims of property management fraud. Apparently your sister-in-law's story changed something in her. David looked up at the sky, thinking of Sarah, both his wife and her sister. 2 women who had faced death with courage and grace, who had chosen love over hatred even when the world showed them cruelty. Emma, he called. Come inside and wash up for dinner. 5 more minutes, Daddy. Sunshine is learning a new trick. David laughed, feeling lighter than he had in years. They were home. They were safe. And somehow, in fighting for justice, they had found peace. The conference room at Skyline Airlines was packed with executives, pilots, and safety officials. Captain David Morrison stood at the podium, preparing to deliver his quarterly report as Chief of Flight Operations. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, he could see planes taking off and landing in the distance, a sight that still filled him with wonder after all these years. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, this quarter's safety record represents the best performance in our company's history. As applause filled the room, David's mind briefly wandered to a letter he had received that morning. It was from a women's prison in Pennsylvania, written in careful handwriting on institutional paper. Captain Morrison, I hope this letter finds you and Emma well. I heard through my lawyer that she won the science fair at her new school. Your daughter sounds remarkable, strong and kind like her family. I wanted you to know that I've been working with a program here that helps women who have experienced domestic violence. Talking about what I did to your family and others has helped me understand the cycle of cruelty that I became part of. I can't undo the damage I caused, but I can try to prevent others from following the same path. I think about Sarah Hendricks often. Her forgiveness changed something in me that I thought was broken beyond repair. I'm not asking for your forgiveness, I know I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that her grace saved more than one life. I have cancer now. The doctors say I have perhaps 6 months. I find myself thinking about how Sarah faced her illness with such dignity while I raged against the world. I'm trying to learn from her example even now. Please give Emma my regards. She was braver than I ever was. Margaret Henderson. David had read the letter twice, then filed it away. He felt no satisfaction in Henderson's illness, no sense of cosmic justice. She was simply a broken person who had finally found a way to heal some of the damage she had caused. Chief Morrison? David refocused on the meeting. Yes. The board wanted me to ask about your recommendations for the new pilot mentorship program. David smiled. Actually, I think we should focus on supporting pilots who are also parents, especially single parents. Military families too. These are often our most dedicated employees, but they face unique challenges. The CEO nodded approvingly. Excellent idea. What prompted this focus? Personal experience, David said simply. I learned that when you support a pilot's family, you get the pilot's best work. When you attack their family, he shrugged. Well, you learn why fighter pilots make formidable enemies. Laughter rippled through the room, but David was already thinking about getting home. Emma, now 10 years old, was performing in her school's spring concert tonight. She was playing violin, a skill she had developed with the confidence that came from knowing she was unconditionally loved and protected. After the meeting, David drove through their neighborhood, past well-maintained houses with friendly neighbors who waved from their porches. It was a far cry from the apartment complex where they had lived in fear and uncertainty. As he pulled into their driveway, he could hear piano music coming from the house. Emma was practicing, and Sunshine, now a dignified adult dog, was undoubtedly lying at her feet as he always did during music practice. David sat in his car for a moment, overwhelmed with gratitude for the simple miracle of a normal evening at home. No HOA harassment, no threats to their security, no fear that tomorrow might bring some new cruelty from people who enjoyed causing pain. The front door opened and Emma appeared, still in her school uniform but with her hair done up for the concert. Daddy? You're home. Did you hear me practicing? Mrs. Chin says I'm ready for the advanced class next year. David got out of the car and scooped his daughter into a hug. She was getting too big for this, but she still indulged her father's need to hold on to these precious moments. I heard you, Princess. You sound beautiful. Sunshine has been my practice audience all afternoon. He's very supportive. Emma grinned. Unlike some dogs, he never complains about wrong notes. As they walked into the house together, Sunshine bounding around them in excited circles, David felt the deep satisfaction of a life rebuilt on solid ground. The storm had passed, the enemies had been defeated, and his family was thriving. That evening, sitting in the school auditorium watching Emma perform with confidence and joy, David thought about the strange journey that had brought them here. Henderson's cruelty had been meant to destroy them, but instead it had revealed their strength. The attempt to break their family had only made them more grateful for what they had. During intermission, Rebecca Chen appeared beside him. She had become a close family friend over the years, and Emma considered her an honorary aunt. She's gotten so good, Rebecca whispered, nodding toward the stage where Emma was tuning her violin for the second half. She has. Music helps her express things she can't put into words. Speaking of expression, Rebecca said quietly, I got word today that Henderson died in prison last week. Peaceful, according to the report. She had been teaching other inmates to read in her final months. David absorbed this news without emotion. I hope she found some peace. You're a better man than most, David. After what she did to your family. She was sick, Rebecca. Sick in a way that made her hurt other people. But in the end she chose to try to heal some of the damage. That's more than many people manage. The lights dimmed for the second half of the concert, and David turned his attention back to the stage. Emma caught his eye from her position in the violin section and gave him a small wave. He waved back, his heart full of love and pride. As the music began, a beautiful piece about hope overcoming darkness, David reflected on the lessons the past few years had taught him. Evil existed in the world, and sometimes it wore a human face and targeted the innocent. But goodness was stronger. Love was more powerful than hatred. And sometimes, when you fought to protect what mattered most, you discovered that you were more resilient than you ever imagined. The final notes of Emma's concert faded into applause, and David stood with the other proud parents, clapping for their children's achievement. Emma beamed from the stage, her eyes shining with the confidence of a child who knew she was cherished and supported. After the concert, as they walked to the car with Emma chattering excitedly about the performance, David felt a sense of completion. The scared, desperate father who had once faced down a cruel woman in an apartment complex parking lot was gone, replaced by a man who understood his own strength and the preciousness of the family he had fought to protect. Daddy, Emma said as they drove home through streets lit by warm streetlights, Mrs. Patterson said you used to be in the military before you became a pilot. That's right, Princess. Were you ever scared? David considered the question seriously. Sometimes. But being scared doesn't make you weak, Emma. Makes you human. What matters is what you do when you're scared. What did you do? I remembered what I was fighting for. When you have something worth protecting, fear becomes secondary to duty. Emma nodded thoughtfully. Like how you protected me and Sunshine when that mean lady tried to hurt us. Exactly like that. As they pulled into their driveway, Sunshine's silhouette appeared in the living room window, tail wagging at their return. Their house glowed with warm light, a beacon of safety and love in a world that could sometimes be cruel and unpredictable. David helped Emma out of the car and watched as she ran to greet Sunshine, who met them at the door with ecstatic enthusiasm. This was what victory looked like, not the destruction of enemies, but the preservation of joy, the protection of innocence, and the triumph of love over hatred. Later that night, after Emma had gone to bed and Sunshine had settled into his favorite spot by the fireplace, David stood on their back porch looking up at the stars. Somewhere up there, Sarah and her sister were together again, watching over the family they had left behind. We kept our promises, he whispered to the night sky. Emma is safe, Sunshine is loved, and the bad guys lost. Sometimes the good guys really do win. A gentle breeze stirred the trees in their yard, and David could almost hear Sarah's voice on the wind. Thank you for being the father Emma needed, for being the man I always knew you were. David smiled, filled with peace, and went inside to the family that Henderson's cruelty had only made stronger. In trying to destroy them, she had given them the greatest gift of all, the unshakable knowledge that their love for each other could survive anything the world threw at them. The last light in the Morrison house went out, and the neighborhood settled into the quiet contentment of families sleeping safely in their beds, protected by fathers who understood that sometimes the greatest battles are fought not with weapons, but with unwavering devotion to the people we love most.